So it's a beautiful, crisp morning on the western edge of the Simpson Desert in Australia. We leave Perny Bore and begin heading east back towards Birdsville. I'm feeling elated as the bike sails across the sand dunes. I come up to a car, find a very safe area to get by them, and then stretch the legs out on the bike again. And I'm just feeling elated, enjoying the wonderful scenery and the cool air. And then I spot it. Out of the corner of my eye, in the right-hand side, something's moving. It darts out onto the track, and next thing I know, at the end of our last video, we were traveling in and around the Lake Pepple area, exploring the salt pans and the mud flats. This is a particularly interesting part of the desert, and if you get out there, one that you should not miss. While camped on the edge of Lake Pepple, we met up with a good friend of mine, Dr. Jeff Wilson, who is training for a wind-powered crossing of the Simpson Desert. In this crossing, he had a 3-wheeled homemade buggy, which was powered only by the wind, picked up in a very large kite. Here we can see him unpacking the kite, setting it up on the salt pan, and then launching the kite. And when this thing is up in the air, it's got a serious amount of power behind it, as you can see. He straps himself into the buggy using a seatbelt type mechanism, and then hooks the kite into the buggy as well. The buggy is steered with his 2 feet on pedals, and then Jeff's attention switches between keeping the kite in the air and avoiding obstacles on the ground. He was kind enough to take my dad for a ride out on Lake Pepple on the buggy, and it's amazing to think that the wind has enough power to move this buggy and 2 grown men at upwards of 50 kilometers an hour on these flats. The following year, Jeff did attempt to do the crossing, but fell short as the winds died on him. He has since traversed Antarctica and holds the world record for the longest crossing of Antarctica and the fastest. Pretty amazing individual.
Oh, jeez.
So after catching up with Jeff and having a little bit of fun with his kite buggy, we're back on the road heading west. Eager to see what the day has in store for us, and of course, what we have in store for the day. Lake Pepple. Awesome sight. The Hay River track heads off that direction, which is north. Just on the other side of that lake, on the eastern side, where I hit the wheel track and did my shoulder. Just parked up on the dune at the moment, waiting for Dad, and there they are now, coming down the face of the dune. Little bit of traffic out here, but a hell of a lot more chewed up than what it used to be. And flies, of course. Gotta have flies. Here we pulled up for lunch and had one of the multiple fuel stops for the bike on this trip. It was at this stop that we met up with a fella that we called the Ninja Biker, who was over from Japan crossing the Simpson Desert. Now here's the tip for riding in soft sand. Stand up on the pegs Keep the power on and keep your weight back. Let the bike do what it's going to do underneath you, but don't get your butt on that seat. You'll spend the entire day standing on the pegs, but your ride will be so much easier than if you were sitting down. And check out our ninja friend here, who's got the epitome of bad technique. He's going to be one tired lad when he finishes this trip. While we were sitting on the dune at lunchtime, we saw these cool little trails in the sand. After a bit of investigation, we found some ant lions, which are pretty amazing ambush creatures.
Come on, little buddy.
After our lunch and refuel, we're back on the track again, heading west. You know, the desert never ceases to amaze me. There's no denying its stark beauty. That's a given, and that is one of the first things that hits you when you're out there. But if you peel the layers of the onion and start to look a little bit deeper, it's amazing the amount of life that is out there. Tiny footprints are a prelude to what you can see if you just open your eyes. There's strange and amazing insect life, some insects that I've never seen anywhere else. There's heaps of reptiles, from small ones that run down the middle of the wheel tracks to much larger ones that can sometimes take up very odd and precarious positions. There's bird life throughout the desert. We found this little fella must have fallen out of a nest somewhere, sitting in the middle of the track. And then of course there's the ubiquitous emu. We found these guys near Air Creek. And of course where there's reptiles and birds, the predators aren't far away. This handsome looking gentleman we found at Dalhousie Springs. And if you keep your eye open for signs of animals, you can be rest assured that the animals aren't too far off. This area here where the camels were laying down was a prelude to a very large herd of camels that we found only a couple dunes away. And then there's the wildflowers. If you're lucky enough to get out there after some recent rains, the desert absolutely blooms with beautiful colors, whites and yellows and purples. But all that beauty doesn't come without its hazards as well. It can be something as simple as a tumbleweed blowing in the middle of the track that you need to get around, through to these killer birds that you find out in the desert. And the variety of them never ceases to amaze me. And even things that you wouldn't expect, like static electricity, for example, can be a challenge from time to time. I hope you agree, it's easy to see why the desert has a real special place in my heart. Having the bike was an excellent way to find the perfect camp. As I was averaging around 70 kilometers an hour, I could cover a lot more ground than the cruiser. That allowed me to scope for the perfect campsite well before the cruiser caught up. Using this tried and true method, we had perfect campsites every time. And this one you see before you is a perfect example. We continued our push west until we hit Dalhousie Springs, had a wonderful warm swim, and then chucked a U-bolt and headed back east towards Birdsville. If you're planning a bike trip into the Simpson Desert, here's my recommendation. Travel unladen. What I mean by that is carry only the bare essentials while you're riding. UHF radio, EPIRB, snacks, and a water bladder. This means you'll need the assistance of a support vehicle, of course. Listen, it's a giant big kids sand pit out there, and you're out there to have fun. I've met many riders who travel unassisted and carry all their camping gear and fuel. They fight and struggle up each dune and basically fall into camp exhausted after the end of each day. I had cold beers, hot showers, a hearty meal, and a warm bed after each ride. You decide which one sounds like more fun. So here we are, pulled up at Dalhousie Springs on the western edge of the Simpson Desert. The spring itself is between 38 and 43 degrees C, being fed by the Great Artesian Basin. It's a fantastic place for a soak after a dusty ride. But be warned, it's very popular, and you can sometimes struggle to get a camp if you arrive late in the day. One other thing to watch out for that you would not expect in the desert: mosquitoes. There are clouds of them there, and they are hungry. Once we hit Dalhousie, we turned around and began our trek east to Birdsville, back across the Simpson Desert. It was not long after Perny Bore where a dingo and I became very close friends. I was traveling along at around 70 an hour and crested over a small dune. A startled dingo on the other side must have thought, "What the blank is that?" and he bolted. Unfortunately for both of us, he decided to zig when he should have zagged. I just clipped him with my boot and nearly went ass over. That was one close call. We continued our push east and pulled up at Hackia Camp, followed by Dead Dog Camp. And no, the one I had a close shave with was fine. If you go out to the desert and can manage the time, I highly recommend traversing both east and west. Believe it or not, it really takes on a different persona depending on the direction that you're traveling. And how good is this? Wouldn't it be awesome if every young person could have an opportunity like this when they were growing up?
Clutch in.
Am I neutral?
Yeah.
Put clutch in.
Clutch in.
Brakes off.
No, not yet. Get into, there you go. Now you can brake off and go immediately over to your foot pedal, and away you go. How cool is that? Huh?
That was pretty cool. Grandpa, if you grab my camera, it's somewhere around there. You can take a photo of me driving.
I sure can. There you go, your first dune.
Ah, big downhill.
Okay, now you gotta go slow now. It'll be rock. Okay, now I can get a photo.
Slowly. That's it.
This one could be a little tougher, but...
Where do I go?
Take right down the middle there. That's it. Oops, it's gonna be a rocker and a roller. No, you gotta get on the foot. On the gas. Don't get that foot off that clutch. Yeah, that's okay. There you go. You're doing great. Doing great.
Doing great. Doing great.
You're doing absolutely wonderful. Keep on the foot. There you go.
I couldn't find the track.
All right, here we are running along Lake Pepple in an easterly direction. Let's pick up on that story where I had a stack in 2011 at this very spot. Just like this trip, we started in Birdsville, went west to Dalhousie, turned around at Dalhousie Springs, and came back east. So by the time I hit this lake, we only had 1 day left in the desert. I keep a little red rag tucked in the dash of the motorbike just to clean the dust off my glasses and the dust off my goggles, that sort of stuff. That little red rag, as I was crossing Lake Pepple, blew out from the dash, and I checked a U-ey to go back and pick it up. When I was chucking that U-ey, my tires got stuck in one of these deep ruts. I high-sided off the bike, came down on my elbow and dislocated my shoulder. I heard it pop, and I knew that was not good. We camped up that night not too far from the shores of this lake, and the following morning, I amped up on painkillers and drove the bike out of the desert. That was not a fun experience. Here's an interesting story. Back in 2011, we did this exact same trip crossing the Simpson Desert, and that was the trip I did my shoulder in. We camped here at Air Creek, and at the time, it actually had water flowing. It was a beautiful spot. Anyway, Mom had a locket that she was given when she was a schoolgirl 50 years prior, and she actually lost it at this campsite. And this is where she thinks she lost it, underneath this tree. And you can see here the difference between 2011 and 2013. Every time we go back out to the desert, I stop at this tree and spend a good 15 minutes just rummaging around and seeing whether I can find that locket. No luck yet, and I don't like my chances, but it's a good excuse to get back out there again. So if you ever camped up here in Air Creek and you find a locket, give me a shout out, because I'd really like to get that back. Once we left Air Creek and continued eastbound, it's only a short 24 kilometers between Air Creek and Big Red.
Yep.
I'll call you.
Yep. Oh, here's Dad coming.
Good.
All clear?
Big Red is certainly aptly named. It is the largest sand dune in the Simpson Desert. And although 40 meters high doesn't sound like much, it's pretty daunting when you're sitting at the base of it. Whatever vehicle you drive, be it a bike or any model of four-wheel drive, it certainly is a challenge, and it's definitely worth spending some time having a play on this awesome sand dune. Once you leave Big Red and head back to Birdsville, it's only a short 35-kilometer drive, and it's on a very well-formed dirt road. For us, once we hit Birdsville, it was time to fuel up, fill up with some camel pies, grab the trailer and load the bike up, and then start our push eastward back to Brisbane. I have to thank my folks, Dad and Mom, for driving the support vehicle and carrying all my gear, and for my son Andrew for sharing the time out there, and for my wife Jill, who supported me all the way. Couldn't have happened without you guys. Love you heaps. Thank you so much. That's it for this episode, folks. Keep the shiny side up. We'll see you next time. Bye now.